U.S. set to destabilize societies. And Ukraine's bid to enlist fighters from Africa sparks outrage. Hello and many thanks for joining us. You're watching IT's News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. The Council of Ministers, during its 5th regular session, has discussed on various issues and passed decisions accordingly. The Council has approved the second National Financial Inclusion Strategy to be implemented during the coming 5 years from 2022 to 2026, in line with the homegrown economic reform. The meeting has also approved 4 draft bills set to regulate allowances to be paid in reward to services delivered by Civil Societies Organizations Authority, Federal Police Commission, Immigration and Nationality Service, and Information Network Security Administration. The regulations will be effective after published on Negarit Gazette. The Council discussed the loan agreement signed with the International Fund for Agricultural Development (IFAD) for the implementation of the Rural Finance Reform Program, Chapter 3. The strategy is aimed to get Ethiopian farmers out of subsistent agricultural practices and transform them to a market-led economy. The 245 million birr loan agreement, to be used for purchase of agricultural inputs and equipment and transportation of products, has been approved by the Council and set to the House for approval. The Council also deliberated on proposed membership of Ethiopia in the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States based on the revised Georgetown Agreement, and decided to make the country a member of the organization and submitted the resolution to the House for approval. Drought, COVID-19, conflict and displacement put the lives of millions of people in Ethiopia in danger, necessitating multifaceted support from Oxfam and other humanitarian partners. This came here when Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen received at his office a delegation led by Gabriela Butcher, Executive Director of the Oxfam International. The Deputy Prime Minister said that the Ethiopian government has tried to support drought-affected people in some parts of Ethiopia who need immediate support from humanitarians, including the Oxfam. For more on that, here is Alula Teklamariam.
The Executive Director of Oxfam International, Gabriela Ramos, held constructive discussion with Foreign Affairs Minister Demeke Mekonnen on how to address the humanitarian catastrophe in the country. Accordingly, Oxfam International expresses commitment to play its share in the problem. Moreover, the two sides noted that drought, COVID-19, conflict and displacement put the lives of millions of Ethiopia in danger, necessitating multifaceted support from Oxfam and other humanitarian partners. Demeke said the Ethiopian government has tried to support drought-affected people in some parts of the country who need immediate support from humanitarians, including Oxfam. According to him, over 23 million Ethiopian people in various parts of the country need expedited humanitarian. Demeke explained the government's effort in providing unimpeded humanitarian access to Tigray, expressing his concern over the provocative actions of the TPLF. He also briefed the Oxfam Executive Director about the encouraging steps taken by the government to ensure lasting peace in the country. In this regard, Demeke mentioned the proposed national dialogue, the release of prominent political figures from prison, and the lifting of the state of emergency as the government's commitment to paving the way for ensuring peace and stability in the country. He finally appreciated the humanitarian support from Oxfam International in relieving poverty in Ethiopia to support the organization's activities in the country. Oxfam International Executive Director, to her part, said her organization would extend all the necessary support to alleviate the suffering of drought-affected people in Ethiopia.
The newly appointed ambassadors have tabled their 100-day plan today, charting out their goals and strategies for implementations as of their first day of duty as mission leaders. Discussions followed the presentations, whereby the proposed document secured approvals with additional inputs for incorporation in light of the geopolitical interests of the countries that the ambassadors are assigned. Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen and Redwan Hussein, State Minister for Foreign Affairs, presided over the discussion. Demeke stressed that the plans should give proper attention to Ethiopia's interests, beside mapping out mere areas of interest in bilateral relationships. Attendees also put forward comments and suggestions deemed essential in enriching the proposals in conformity with the tailored needs of Ethiopia.
Hey everybody, behind me are the Adwa Mountains. If you've never heard of them, don't worry about it, but look it up.
We just climbed to the top of a very small hill, felt like a mountain, to go see the best viewpoint of the battle site. I am slightly out of breath, I don't know, and might have on improper shoes.
Some newly elected members of the ruling Prosperity Party's Executive Committee said the recently held First Congress was exemplary in that it provided a forum for the expression of ideas over and above being an occasion serving all members equally. The party dwelt at length on unethical practices of some members, dismissing those found to be involved in such practices. In their stead, the party brought young, aspiring, and energetic members. The Ethiopian news agency interviewed them, and Habtamu Ashagre presents the story as follows.
The Prosperity Party held its first Congress meeting between March 11 to 13, 2022, reaching consensus on a host of issues concerning the East African countries' current situation and future course of direction. Talking to the Ethiopian agency, some of the newly elected Executive Committee members indicated that the election of committee members was participatory and remains exemplary to other political parties.
በጣም እጅግ ዲሞክራሲያዊ ነው ብለን ነው የምንወስደው።
Members took part in a democratic manner. These members came from every corner of the nation. The election process was participatory and showed the extent to which democracy can be practiced. The process also provides a good lesson for other contesting political parties.
According to PP Executive Committee members, the Prosperity Party is exercising inclusive and participatory democracy during its first Congress.
በተለየ መንገድ ሁሉም ብሔር ብሔረሰቦች ውስጥ የተወከሉ የብልጽግና ፓርቲ አባላት
all representatives from various nations and nationalities have participated without difference in this Congress of Prosperity Party. They have equal vote to elect leaders. This Congress of the Prosperity Party was more remarkable and successful compared to congresses held by previous ruling parties in Ethiopia.
The Prosperity Party executive members underlined that the ruling party is committed to find remedies to burning issues being raised by the general public.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has awarded health professionals who were in front line during Operation for National Unity in Diversity with Certificate of Recognition. Chief of Staff of the Army, Field Marshal Burhanu Jula, Defense Minister Abraham Belai, Health Minister Dr. Leah Taddese, and dozens of health professionals who contributed their share in the operation have attended the national recognition ceremony. The health professionals have provided their unparalleled service during the Operation for National Unity and Diversity, the Premier said. The Premier further extended great appreciation to the health professionals for their bold contribution in the operation. As the punitive H.R. 6600 bill is still up in the air, some scholars argue that such sanctions are war by other means and that they cause great suffering, particularly as an economic warfare. The U.S. claims the right to sanction, to steal from other nations, with 1/3 of humanity suffering from these crimes. The argument goes on. In the following reportage, our staff reporter, Jerusalem Betzaha, takes a look at the details of the story.
Scholars ask whether the post-World War II international order is suited for a rapidly changing 21st century Africa. One of these, Aklog Birara, who published an article on the issue, also puts forward arguments by Ann Garrison, who is a journalist for The Independent. According to Garrison, the U.S. claims the right to sanction, to steal from other nations with a of humanity suffering from these crimes. Sanctions are war by other means and cause great suffering around the world. Despite all the terror about what could happen in Ukraine next, Afghans are still facing freezing cold and starvation, and the U.S. has seized not just frozen but seized their $7 billion in assets on deposit at the Federal Reserve. And Ethiopia and Eritrea face brutal sanctions in House Resolution 6600 and said. Similarly, Professor Anne Fitzgerald, Senior Security and Justice Advisor in UK and Horn of Africa, also expressed her views the impacts of the sanction from the immediate to the lingering ones.
Other specific trends that I'm thinking about with regard to the situation in Ethiopia: health services, education, infrastructure. So based on the fact that the main impacts are on the price of food because of low cash hampering logistics and transportation, which delivers food and medical supplies and pharmaceuticals, unemployment, trade, international financial transactions, and the repair of infrastructure, I think are very specific impacts that would be felt deeply in Ethiopia.
Gerald also recommends mitigating the impact of sanctions. She said the country has to have a great amount of cash reserve, though this cannot be granted for long.
If we look at the economics, there's no dispute in the literature as well. Although the impact of sanctions can be partially mitigated if the country has ample cash reserves, this is a short-term solution. This happened with Russia after it annexed the Crimea in 2014. Ethiopia does not have a lot of cash reserves at the moment, so it doesn't have the ability to mitigate against short-term impacts.
Talking to ETV, a young Gambian Pan-Africanist, Osman Torres, said it's now high time for Africans to stand together and boost their cooperation for better representations at the international arena.
One of the most difficult challenges that Africa has been going through is the fact that each country speaks individually. And when sanctions are on them, they do it on individual countries, and it really makes it difficult for them to strive. This is the home of the African Union. And the African Union is not just a structure. It has to be spiritual and based on founding principles in which the African Union was built upon. So Africa must speak with one voice, but there has to be a cooperation among African countries to say no when it is in the disadvantage of a single African country. How do we protect each other in the global market? How do we protect each other in the global space? especially when it comes to politics and manipulation. We all know that there is no balance in international politics, and there are a lot of forces outside there that only looks at the interest of the continent. And Ethiopia have been a victim for so many years. It's high time that Africans, look forward to that brotherhood, that Ethiopia has always been the root and the founding principle of what Africa is, and we build upon that to voice, to speak the same language with the same tune, but to equally condemn where necessary.
Finally, the author Akloq concluded his analysis by questions to the reader on why the West, led by the United States, is determined to crush Russia. The motive behind goes beyond saving Ukraine. Differences notwithstanding, passage of HR 6600 will worsen Ethiopia's fragile economy.
Ethiopia is going to have to, what's the most important thing for Ethiopia is to chart its own course for development of its nation and to look for allies who will support it. Now, one thing you see in the current conflict going on in Russia, Europe, and Ukraine is that the unipolar world order, which has been dominated by the United States since the fall of the Soviet Union in 1990, 1991, is no longer totally in control. Putin, in his own way, has overthrown the rules of the game. And therefore, the United States and the West is no longer a complete nation.
In summary, Akloq said superpowers such as the US get away with their misdeeds because there is no greater power over them to decide or to settle punitive sanctions. The tragedy is that as the poorest of the poor, low and middle-income citizens who suffer the most by punitive sanctions, such as the passage of HR 6600.
Some students who took higher education entrance exam told EBC that the results published by the National Educational Assessment and Examination Agency is very shocking and falls short of matching their rigorous efforts. The students and their teachers called upon the government to recheck the results and rectify the situation. Take a look.
The grade we have received does not describe our efforts. It is below our expectation. It can be expected to score low results in some cases as we are students, but this kind of score is totally unacceptable. I successfully passed grade 10 national exam with a great distinction, scoring straight A. If one could also check my status at the 11th grade, my average result was above 90 out of 100. So how can one like me claim not this lowest grade? The result low compared to the status of the students, it is so shocking. For instance, to mention my previous academic status, when I was in grade 10, I had scored above 3.6 and my transcript score is above 80. Thus, when you see the results put as a whole, with both social and natural streams, it is quite disgusting. From the social sciences stream, there only two students who made the criterion. So I call upon the government to reevaluate and recheck our scores. My result in general does reflect my academic status. I was an outstanding student, be it in a class and in the compound. Everyone knows this, including my teachers. So I call upon the government to recheck and reevaluate advanced education at the early age. Look at the problem. How can our young brothers and sisters attend their education in this way, seeing such appalling results of clever students? Anyway, we will see what will happen. What we observe is really offensive. Like this one, my son's grade 10 results were good. Although there was a very severe war around here, but they had studied very well, confronts all the situations. Hence, his parents also feel reprehensible of this poor result even more than the students. students, and we call upon the government to find out solutions in the shortest time. Even though the entrance exams are at a distance of 15 kilometers away from the battlefield, that could not be the case for the low grade. I, as a teacher, do not accept it. It was heartbreaking. All the teachers, school society and their parents as well got confused because of this bad news. I can assure you that this result never describes the academic status of my students. To show evidence from the experience and the trend of the previous year from this school, more than 76% of students have passed with very great results and joined the universities. Therefore, I recommend for further investigation and a grading system.
In business news, the Ethiopian Customs Commission says its capacity of arresting criminals involved in contraband trade has risen to 87%, up from 51%, thanks to the ongoing legal reforms. The various reforms put in place have also made it possible for the Commission to reap the benefits of improved performance. Shagao Yamata brings us up to speed.
Following the reforms made, the Ethiopian Customs Commission announced that it has implemented a one-stop window and digitalized services for faster and more reliable delivery. The Commissioner says amendments in the Commission's legal frameworks remain a topmost priority.
It is very important to lay foundation for legal frameworks and working systems. The working styles of the Commission have to be dependable, equitable, long-lasting and transparent. Clearing the legal framework and working styles that the Commission is undertaking is essential. Therefore, this is taken as per the reform agenda.
To the study conducted by the Commission, compliance with customs laws and regulations stood at only 65%. According to the Deputy Commissioner, the legal amendments have helped bring better public compliance.
These legal amendments have brought several improvements in the performance of the Commission. If we take the rate of the controlling criminals involved in the contraband trade, it stood at 50% at the outset of the reform. But now we've managed to raise the rate of controlling these criminals to 87%.
Developing and implementing ECMS software that makes the Commission's performance convenient and transparent is part of the other amendment of the legal framework, it was disclosed. The developed digital system alleviates the existing challenges and creates easier working system.
The previous working system was not good enough in selecting the price limit database, calculating the selected price information and saving the worked items. All these were performed manually. However, the newly developed software solves all these problems.
The Customs Commission has also prioritized the creation of skilled manpower above everything else, adding creating conducive work environment in the newly erected building is the other area of focus.
It is to be recalled that Ethiopia had proposed a partial privatization of the state's giant Ethio Telecom by selling 40% of the equity share capital of the company, according to Ministry of Finance. As a result, the government of Ethiopia had had discussions with several bidders. Given the recent developments and fast-moving macroeconomic changes, both globally and from a country perspective, the government of Ethiopia has chosen to postpone the privatization process, the Ministry of Finance announced. The government of Ethiopia believes that taking time to accommodate the improved macroeconomic situation, as well as continually improving financial performance of Ethio Telecom, will result in better value for all the parties involved, and in particular the citizenry of Ethiopia, the statement said. Ethiopia remains committed to finalizing the privatization process and looks forward to re-engaging in due course with existing and additional parties that have expressed interest in the RFP. the ministry added. And now take a quick look at the latest foreign exchange rates.
Welcome to Freetown. My name is Lansana Mansaray, commonly called Bami Boy. I am based in Freetown. I run a media collective called the Freetown Media Center. Freetown is my home.
The capital and largest city of Sierra Leone, Freetown, is a major port city along the coastline of the Atlantic Ocean. Around 1 million people call this city home.
In Freetown, you find different people from 12 ethnic groups that we have all living in this space.
The area around Freetown was settled in 1787 by freed slaves. It became a melting pot for liberated African and Caribbean settlers. The cotton tree in the city center reflects Freetown's unique history.
After the abolition of slavery, freed slaves from the Nova Scotia settled here, what we now know as Freetown, and that cotton tree right there was the place where, they had their services.
Freetown is Sierra Leone's financial hub. The city's economy revolves largely around Petro Harbor, deep water quay, the biggest in Africa. Since making the switch to a filmmaking career, Lansana Mansaray's new workplace looks very different. One of his documentaries, a film about the Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone, was nominated for an Emmy Award in 2019. It was the first ever West African film to receive this accolade.
Here is my studio. I work from here. I spend a lot of time here working. Morning, sometimes to night, I'm just editing, films and recording sound also. So I spend a lot of time in here.
Lansana Mansaray is certain he will never run out of stories in a city like Freetown.
Much love from Freetown.
Welcome back. African governments have raised concerns following Ukraine's call to enlist volunteer fighters from Africa, but some youth have expressed interest in fighting for Ukraine. Alula Teklamariam has more from the CGTN.
Volunteers at the Ukrainian in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, seeking to be enlisted as fighters. This came after reports of Ukraine's recruitment drive targeting Africans. In Nigeria, many youth indicated interests. For them, it is yet another opportunity to leave the shores of the country to seek greener pastures.
Better to even die there than to die in this country. Yes. My brother, is it anything special in this country? You and I know that nothing special in this country.
Some of us think that it's better to die for a country who will value you, right, than to die for a country who will not. Even while you're alive, it seems as if you're dead already.
But volunteers have since stepped back following stringent travel requirements and stiff resistance from Nigerian authorities.
What we have seen in the case of Nigeria is that we've seen a segregation, or probably I can say a discrimination, because you were aware of that rule when the second secretary of the Ukrainian embassy in Nigeria mentioned that Nigerians who want to volunteer to fight of Ukraine must pay $1,000. You cannot expect the reaction you've seen from Nigeria.
I support those authorities that are opposed to it. But, you know, the request or the idea did not go to those authorities. The idea is appealing to the citizens of these authorities, these countries. The countries saying no, their rights because they want to protect their sovereignty.
UN peacekeeping efforts have helped several countries navigate through conflict situations, but Ukraine has moved to get mercenaries from Africa and elsewhere.
So it was a call for survival, and that call has been responded to. You are aware of that. But is it acceptable by international law in that context? Yes, because the United Nations has not come out to probably declare that call unlawful.
Over 100 Nigerians had volunteered to be recruited to fight for Ukraine, but Nigerian authorities have insisted they will not allow the country's citizens to be used as mercenaries in Ukraine or anywhere else in the world.